Don't try to skip steps. Most companies are like this. They have certain pre-launch phases that you need to go through. Some of that includes targeting. Know your target, know your competition, know your competition's pricing, know your whole competitive set back and forth. Understand your packaging. Spend the time to work on your all of those pre-launch steps. And then when you launch, all of the launch steps that you need to do, testing things out with your co-packer. It's very easy to say, oh, forget it. I'm just going to launch and I'll just wing it. That is not a good idea. Even though you're a much smaller brand, you need to know who you are, because at the end of the day, if you try to be everything to everyone, you are no one.
Hello and welcome to the DTC Podcast. I'm Eric Dyck. Today it's crunch time with Laurel Orley, co-founder and CEO of Daily Crunch Snacks, which offers a range of beautifully flavored sprouted almonds for mindful snackers searching for the ultimate crunch. Daily Crunch Snacks was started just under 3 years ago, but has truly sprouted since switching focus to e-commerce via Amazon at the start of the pandemic. In this podcast, we digest the things that Laurel learned to do and not to do after working at Mindshare and with Unilever, why pivoting to e-commerce has massively accelerated their business and how they did it, how a newsletter drop caused them to sell out of all their inventory, as well as the benefits of working with CPG accelerators and lots more. Hope you enjoy it, and on with the show. This podcast is sponsored by Klaviyo, the email and text marketing platform that puts D2C brands in control. If you're the leader of a D2C brand, you need a platform that hustles as hard as you do. Klaviyo unlocks the power of your e-commerce data so you can personalize and automate messages that keep customers coming back. D2C brands communicate with Klaviyo. Get started for free at klaviyo.com/DTC. Welcome to the D2C Podcast, Laurel. Why don't we start with the why of Daily Crunch Snacks?
This why is not one sentence long. So actually, I learned Daily Crunch Snacks through my aunt, who is my fellow co-founder, Aunt Diane. And she learned this process in India over 15 years ago, where whenever I'd see her at a family function, she'd gift me a bag of these sprouted almonds, cashews, walnuts. And for me, there was just something different about them. They were lighter, airier, crunchier. I couldn't quite put my finger on the difference, but it was so much so that my now 10-year-old son, who eats like a bird and eats nothing, would inhale these almonds and cashews, and we'd fight over them. And when I left my career in the consumer packaged goods corporate industry, I kept on going back to Diane's sprouted nut snacks. I said, Diane, let's bring these to the mainstream market. Let's do this. And that was 3 years ago today.
Let's just talk a little bit about the benefit of sprouted. I know there's the periods I remember in my childhood where my mom would buy sprouted bread, and there are major benefits of eating sprouted food. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So Eric, it's quite different with an almond. I didn't know this when I first started, but almonds actually have the most amount of phytic acid on them than any other food ingredient in the world. When you soak almonds in water, which we do, it releases the phytic acid, which starts the germination process. When this happens, it becomes much more bioavailable, which makes it more nutrient dense and easier to digest. So while there are a lot of people who have gut issues when they eat nuts, when they're sprouted, they don't have these issues. But for the majority of us who don't have these issues, when you're eating sprouted almonds, cashews, walnuts, the biggest difference you notice is in the crunch. Through our sprouting process, when the almonds soak in water, they actually expand in size, creating this hollow center. And then when it goes into a dehydration at really low temperatures, the excess moisture is removed, but the hollow center remains intact. So we actually call it the crunchy crave, because you really do notice a difference between the crunchiness of a sprouted almond versus a regular or roasted almond.
Very interesting. Let's go back to your big CPG and agency experience. I've sold in different parts of my career, sold to big agencies, sold to Mindshare, worked with them. But you were talking to me about what you were working on at these big companies.
So I started my career on the Diageo business, which those of you who love whiskey and Guinness beer and Johnny Walker, those are some of the flagship brands I worked on, where I then moved on to Hasbro Toys. But I worked on the Unilever business for 13 years at Mindshare. So this was the media side, media strategy. And I worked on some of their flagship brands, the Dove campaign for Real Beauty. So I helped launch the men's Dove Men Plus Care into the U.S. market. I worked on Hellmann's mayonnaise. I know more about mayonnaise than the normal human being should know about mayonnaise. And I also worked on some of their flagship global brands like Lipton. This gave me a really great perspective of how to work with partners from digital all the way to, at the time that I started, just to give you a perspective on Unilever, TV was the largest media that we spent, followed by print. And when I left, it was digital that they spent the majority of their investments in, as the trends go with all the rest of the big brands.
Yep.
So that's no big surprise.
By the time you left, I bet it was a lot of like digital display stuff too. I bet there was a lot of budget in the big RT. That's actually where I worked with Mindshare when I worked for a real-time bidding network. And that was always interesting.
Yeah. So when I was leaving, a lot was also changing with the e-commerce space. So a lot was just shifting into e-commerce on how we spent within retail. And obviously we've seen how much that's grown, Eric, with how people search products now on Amazon over Google as the number one area to search for new food CPG products. Display has always been relevant, but it's just been how we reach the consumer. So while I've been kind of out of the Mindshare world for a little over 4 years now, you know how it is in media. Things just are changing constantly.
Yep,
so what was the pulse 4 years ago could be a very different direction now, especially in the digital space. I mean, you have to remember, 17 years ago, digital didn't exist. Smartphones didn't exist.
No.
So we still very much are in a new territory with everything in digital.
100%, I think. And I've been around since I was doing that in the late 2000, early 2010s basically, and so it is amazing how far things have come. I wanted to ask, what in now becoming an entrepreneur and starting your own business, what are some of the things that you've taken from your experience in a positive way? What are some do's that you're repeating from your previous experience? Yeah,
well, I'll tell you, when I worked on brands like the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, those are multi-million-dollar media budgets. And then when you go to a startup and you virtually have no budget, you really have to know your negotiating tactics. We won a really coveted award when we first launched Daily Crunch snacks back in March 2020. And to use the licensing rights of this award, they were charging us the same fee that they would charge me if I still worked on Dove. And understanding this perspective and knowing that, I was able to negotiate and bring down that cost significantly to a point where we could actually buy the licensing rights. It gave me a perspective to know, okay, when I was a big player and had this budget to work with, I knew what those costs were. And now that I'm a little player, I'm a startup, I have that perspective and I have that confidence to be able to push back on some of these bigger partners that do believe in us and they do want to see us grow. And I get it that they need to make money too. But at the same time, to know, all right, I'm a little gal. We're a woman-owned certified company, but we're a startup. So it's really helped me with negotiations, especially with these bigger partnerships.
That's really interesting, knowing how much room there is in a way, and knowing it's like that. It's really all negotiations are like that in a way. Just know, the more you know, the more room you have that you know about, the more you can push it in. And so often just a little bit can get you a lot in that. And I imagine a lot of entrepreneurs go into those situations with maybe no idea that there is room. They do feel like that there's, that they just have to kind of go into it more passively.
Know your cards. For us, it took me 6 months to get woman-owned certified. That is a big card to play. I didn't know this, but
I didn't know that either. What's the actual? It's a board that certifies it, or?
It's called WeBank, and I actually highly recommend it for anybody listening that is a woman-owned company. They also have this for other diversity suppliers out there. So it's a big, lengthy process. It's not that I think it's $300, but there's a lot of paperwork to prove that you clearly are woman-owned and everything that you say you are is true. But it goes into a database, and for most startups, for all startups, you really have to leverage, what you have. And we actually got an email last week from Starbucks, and they learned about us through the diversity supplier program for consideration for one of their lines to be a topper for one of our flavors. And they would have never found out about us if we didn't do the woman-owned certification. And also, people are 10 times more likely to buy a new product if you put the woman-owned logo on your packaging. So that's something that we didn't do at first, but now we very much do. So I think you need to know your cards. You need to know, okay, what makes my brand different? And when I'm going to negotiate with partners, with stores, whatever the case is, how am I going to use these cards to my benefit?
Amazing. Okay, so on the flip side of that, after being in that environment, which has its ups and its downs, what have you sort of decidedly, what's a big don't that you learned from your experience at these big companies?
That's a really good question. Don't. Here's one. Don't try to skip steps. Even though, when I worked on the Unilever business, and most companies are like this. They have certain pre-launch phases that you need to go through. And some of that includes targeting. Know your target. Know your competition. Know your competition's pricing. Know your whole competitive set, back and forth. Understand your packaging. Spend the time to work on all of those pre-launch steps. And then when you launch, all of the launch steps that you need to do. Testing things out with your co-packer. And it's very easy to say, oh, forget it. I'm just going to launch and I'll just wing it. That is not a good idea. Even though you're a much smaller brand, you need to know who you are. Because at the end of the day, if you try to be everything to everyone, you are no one. And we really had to drill down of who is our tribe, who are our core 1,000 ambassadors, who are our real targets? Are we talking to the nut category or are we talking to the superfood category? Where do we belong? And that's really helped us push us forward to where we are right now, a year and a half after launch.
Very nice. And where are you? What are you, man? Are you a superfood? Are you a snackable? My household goes through a lot of nuts. We're eating walnuts on the regular, like big tubs of them. But what? Yeah, where would I find you in the aisles?
So kind of like where we are is we're actually going through an accelerator program right now called SKU, and that's out of Dallas. They're one of the largest consumer packaged goods programs, and it's ending next week. And with that, we've had 12 incredible mentors mentoring us, and that's been a really big question for us. Do we belong in the superfood set? Do we belong in the nut snack category? Where do we belong? At the end of the day, there are some stores that have superfood categories, but the word superfood in itself is kind of elusive. What you may think of as a superfood, Eric, is not necessarily what I think of a superfood.
Of course.
And when you think of all the superfood brands out there, they're all this bright, bold, breakthrough packaging. So if we have to decide between the two, we really feel like we belong in the nut category space because that is where we stand out and really can make a difference with that we're sprouted. We have this breakthrough packaging. We have this patent pending process. And with superfoods, I think it's a different ballgame.
People eat a lot more nuts than they eat superfoods, I'll tell you. I think generally, right? It is a much broader category, and then rather than maybe dominating or competing in a very niche category, you're like this interesting alternative because you're still nuts. You just have this angle on nuts.
I think
which
of
is a
us
smart
as,
play.
Yeah, I think of us as Boom Chicka Pop.
Yep,
and
that we have it on our top shelf. Yeah,
and I go to Costco and I see that purple bag in everybody's cart, but then also think of regular popcorn in a paper bag. I mean, there are subtle differences between the two, but at the end of the day, their packaging is genius.
Yeah,
and they've really broken through by their packaging. And we feel like we are that to the nut category, that we have this breakthrough packaging and these functional benefits and this crunch differentiation that when people try the product, they'll see the difference.
Crunch differentiation. I love it. That's a great term. I wanted to ask, one of the things, having started this podcast and this whole newsletter, this media company in the pandemic, I wanted to ask what sort of challenge the sort of beginning of the pandemic, has that thrown you for any loops?
Well, we launched in March 2020, and I had, being someone who's only worked corporate, going to a startup, in my head, I thought, we're going to get this packaging and we're going to launch in all the Whole Foods across the country, and we're going to do this all in 3 months. And of course, we're actually still not in Whole Foods. We're currently in the review process, but we launched in March 2020, and all of a sudden, all of these big buyers for all these big stores are like, we're not taking small brands right now. We're not interested in small brands right now, rightfully so. There was a pandemic. And we said, how are we going to launch and grow as a brand when all these big retailers aren't taking us? So we went on the e-commerce route where we worked on our website. We launched on Amazon. We got into, so KeHE is one of the largest natural food distributors in the United States, and they just opened a KeHE Elevate program, and we are one of 6 food brands, snack brands, that were accepted into the program, and it really helped elevate us and get into those natural channel stores that we would not find otherwise. Mm-hmm. So really focusing on those 3 outlets is why, and it really made us kind of take a step back, where we've also, tweaked our packaging and really tried to figure out who are these people buying us, trying to understand who those core consumers are, finding out, why they want to buy us. And a lot of it was for our clean ingredients. And now we've been able to launch into Meijer, launch into Foxtrot Market, King's. We're actually launching with Thrive Market in 2 weeks, which we're really excited about. So, I'm someone who is kind of impulsive and impatient by nature. Mm-hmm. And my fellow co-founder, Dan, always says, Laurel, you can't be impatient. We are going fast, and you have to believe that we're doing this the right way. We're going through all the steps. So anyway, mm-hmm. that's where we are right now.
I just have to bring this up. It's funny. I did a pre-interview yesterday with a friend of mine, Josh Elizeche, Josh Snow Teeth Whitening. He's coming on the podcast. I think I'm doing a podcast with him this afternoon, and he was actually just telling me a story about this mastermind that he went to, where there was an older guy there that no one was really talking to, and everyone was these young, hip, e-commerce guys, and there's this old guy in a suit there, and at the end of the day, he kind of gets up and tells his story. His story was actually, he was like an almond magnate, actually, this guy, and he owned all these distribution channels for almonds, but kids weren't eating almonds. Kids don't like almonds. So he just didn't have that market. And so what he did is he went to Oreo. He went to Nabisco or Nestle, whoever that is, Nabisco, and said, I've got this huge distribution chain. I've got all this product. He basically white labeled Oreo. And he said, I'll give you 25% of the profits if you just let me use the brand. And he actually went out and coated almonds in Oreos and then dipped them in chocolate under the Oreo brand. And he just skyrocketed this whole new channel by actually leveraging legacy CPG. in this really interesting way. And I just talking with you, I just think it's a parable that'd be interesting for you to think about.
No, I mean, it's so genius. And I also saw Vienna Snacks did that with the mint Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Where they flavored it, and with a flavor that consumers understand and recognize. And Eric, this comes up a lot in our innovative flavors. So we have these flavor profiles that sometimes people don't really know, and we're still testing it out. But one of them is Golden Goodness, and it's our savory line. It kind of is this like umami but vegan cheesy. It's hard to explain what it is, but people love it. And for us, it's this line of, okay, we have these innovative flavors. We have our cinnamon Java that we're launching next month. We have a cacao plus sea salt, but it's keto. So they're all kind of slightly different. And do we just do a mainstream product and flavor that everybody knows already? And that's something we actually spoke about this morning, because we really can be substituted also as a chip. And there's so many chip flavors where we are kind of that healthy alternative to a chip. So we did just launch our Nashville Hot flavor. That's what we're doing exclusive with Thrive Market for the first 30 days. And then
very cool. And
then it will be on Amazon. But people really love hot, and they're used to the hot flavor. But, we called it Nashville Hot. So, yeah, flavor profiles can make or break a brand.
Need high-quality, fully licensed UGC? With Mini Social, you can produce beautiful, authentic, and fully licensed user-generated content featuring your products with micro-influencer creators. D2C brands like Native, Olipop, Hydrant, and others love working with Mini Social as a way to populate their organic social acquisition channels, website, and beyond, while also competing dollar for dollar with traditional influencer activations on Instagram and TikTok. Get started on a campaign at minisocial.com today. Let's go into growth a little bit. You mentioned how e-commerce at the advent of the pandemic was a huge lever for the business. What specifically within e-commerce has really driven the growth? Is it specifically Amazon? Is it ads? What have been the actual strategies that have worked?
So within e-commerce, we actually are focusing a lot of our efforts on Amazon, and we have seen very little ROAS when it comes to Facebook and Instagram. I think think about it, Eric, as a startup brand, a brand that you don't know, you haven't tried yet, you see this come up on Instagram. Are you really going to try it? Are you really going to click on it, then buy it, put out your credit? I mean, it's just all these steps. I was once in a meeting at Google when I was still at Mindshare, where one of the heads there said the statement that still resonates with me of, you want to do as much as you can to the consumer to reduce the friction, taking out the steps. I mean, that was actually when they were promoting Google Glass, which that whole thing just got canned. But
it's coming back. They're going to bring it back.
What can you do to reduce the friction, to remove those steps in the consumer's journey? Because if you can remove that, the more you can remove, the better you can get to the shopping cart and for them to purchase. So we have some apps that we've been using for our website, like Repeats, and all of these exit pop-ups where they literally just have to click a button and it's already in their cart and they just have to press pay. And the same goes with Amazon. I mean, as I just said before, Amazon now is the number one site where people are searching for consumer packaged good brands over Google. So we hired this new agency called Noble, and they are overseeing our Amazon business. And since we started working with them, we've really just revamped our strategy, revamped what we're trying to do on Amazon, and we have pretty aggressive goals for 2022, but I think that they're something that we could really achieve.
And that's a combination through organic as well as paid on Amazon?
Correct. Organic, paid partnerships. We did a partnership with certain influencers or bloggers such as Hungry Girl. So Hungry Girl has an Amazon Live, and people really trust what she says about brands. And
what's an Amazon Live? This is the first. You can actually go live on Amazon?
this is a new feature that Amazon has where, and you can Google it, like Amazon Live with Hungry Girl.
Yeah,
Where
so cool.
she'll go on there and it is live and she'll talk about certain products. I think it drives to the Hungry Girl page and people can just go in there and then buy the products and check out. But Amazon is coming up with all these new features. So for example, they're also coming out with they just already came out with having a climate friendly badge. And that's something that's really important for us, being sustainable. So we're working on getting the badge on there. And we're also working on new videos. Videos rule on Amazon. It just beats out a static post. That I call it food porn. If you can get a great food porn video of your product,
Is it called mukbang? Is that what it's called? There's the whole thing where people just eat huge amounts of food, right?
Well, it's like these gorgeous videos of this. I think of Fly by Jing. So there's a few brands that I just really love following, and one of them is Fly by Jing, and she has these different types of sauces, and she drizzles these sauces on these dumplings, and it's just game over. I buy it. I just bought 2 more bottles, and it's people buy with their eyes. They see something, they're hungry, like that looks amazing. So we just did a huge shoot last week to do these porn videos, food porn videos. Sorry,
don't want to get taken out of context.
Food porn videos, and I think it's going to be a real game changer when you can really bring food alive through a video versus a static post.
That's really, and you have that crunch. Sorry, what was the term about crunch?
So
that's
actually,
ASMR. That's actually ASMR.
Yes, that's
right?
such a great point, Eric. So we actually have a video right now on Amazon. If you go on Daily Crunch Snacks, that has someone crunching, and you can hear that difference. It's really transparent, and actually, in a lot of the pitches I do, that's how I end it. I always say and get crunching, and I crunch on an almond, and it just is so audio. So we have that.
It's too bad that it has not that I haven't received the snacks yet. I think by the time this goes out, I will have received them, and I'll make sure to record a little crunch, and we can Declan insert it right here. This is what the crunch sounds like. Okay, there we go. Okay. Oh, I wanted to actually ask about Hungry Girl specifically. So that they're a newsletter, which is great. We're a newsletter. It's a really interesting model. What was this sort of immediate impact when Hungry Girl, launched your product to her audience?
Yeah. So let me tell you my journey with Hungry Girl. Last December, I decided to send a bunch of samples out to all different podcasters, just saying, here's some of my product. I'd love for you to try it. I'd love to be considered. And I didn't hear back from any of them, and I just forgot about it. And then February 3rd, I remember it was a Monday morning, our then intern and our first hire, Kenzie, she called me at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she's like, "What is going on, Laurel? We just sold out of almost everything on Amazon in 4 hours. We're sold out. We're done. We have sold out of all of our inventory." And we could not figure it out for the life of us. We're like, what could it have been? We just couldn't figure it out. And then I was going through my emails the next day, and I saw this Hungry Girl email. And I said, oh my gosh, did she get my product and maybe put us in there? And lo and behold, in the newsletter it was top 3 finds that you need of snacks you need to get in your pantry ASAP, and we are the first one in there, and it linked directly to Amazon. And that's when it really, for me, was that lightning in a bottle, because everyone's like, oh, influencers, bloggers, and for me, nothing was working. And I realize now that we were going after the wrong type of bloggers or influencers at that time. It wasn't resonating with who our core brand ambassadors were, our core consumers. Then she put us on her Snack Haul podcast that month. And that also just went, and this was not, we didn't pay for this. And we just saw the magic in her newsletter. So we actually decided to do an Amazon Live with her that was paid in June, and we are doing that again in January. And I think for us, it's just finding who those right partners are. And
how many people will she get out on a live?
How many? She has over 1 million email subscribers.
Wow. But a live is real time, right? Like it's like kind of like a webinar. Like it's a.
So how many people should get on a live? That is a great question.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I know this is something that's new for them too.
Yeah. It's there's the Chinese network that's sort of based about like, you know, watching people shop, for instance. And so it's interesting that this is the first I'd heard of Amazon Live, and it makes perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense. I'm interested for you, what's your stance on content marketing? This is something, you know, with D2C, we've actually just launched our first course, but it meant a year and a half of creating our audience first with content. And now we've kind of launched a product to that audience. I'm curious what your sort of stance on content marketing is, and whether you have any strategies that you're thinking about for that for 2022.
So this is something I would divert Kenzie to. So Kenzie was our intern, and now she is our first-time hire, and she's actually in charge of this. So when you say content marketing, you mean actually like videos? Can you?
I just think, yeah, like whatever content it is, like whatever content you're putting out to kind of serve your audience and keep them around in a way that you don't have to pay for.
Well, for people love recipes. So being a food brand, we're really trying to focus a lot more on recipes. We've actually found certain influencers on Instagram who do amazing food recipes, and we pay them to create a new recipe for us every month, and also for the photography. And then we share this with our audience via a newsletter, on Instagram, many different ways. So we want people to understand that this is Daily Crunch is a brand that you don't just eat alone, and how you can incorporate it into your diet, how it can be a yogurt topper, a salad topper, how you can make this with your chocolate chip cookies. There's so many different ways to incorporate that. So for our content, we're really giving them a lot of recipe ideas. This is what they want to see. And that is where a large portion of our focus is right now.
Nice. You mentioned earlier about the incubator that you're currently working in. I bet that was a tough, as a bootstrapping founder, I bet that was a tough decision. I'd like to know a little bit about like what you were seeking out there, and whether you've sort of gotten it there at the accelerator.
Yeah. So Eric, you know, I always say being an entrepreneur, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And when we first launched, the first year, it was go, go, go. We were winning all these awards. We got the green light for like Meyer. We were in the CVS health hubs. And then all of a sudden we applied to these 2 programs, and we didn't get in. And I was really bummed about it. But for me, it's all kind of part of this journey that you kind of learn of when is the right time. And one of the things that we didn't get in the first go around was SKU, this consumer packaged goods accelerator that we're in right now. And I wasn't going to apply again, but last minute, someone emailed us. I think it was Scott, who does the kale chips. He's the CEO and founder of the kale chips. He said, apply. So we applied again. And I just kind of, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, you're applying to all of these things, all of these stores, and I've learned just to kind of like not get my hopes up, in the sense of, this is where I feel like we belong, we've put our best foot forward, and like we've done everything we could, let's apply and move on. So we applied, and then we kept on making it to the next step, the next round. We made it to the final round, and we got into SKU. And, you know, there's a lot of pros and cons in this. Well, the cons in this, it could be a con, is that you give up equity. But for us, this was worth it. We felt like this was going to really accelerate us, and this was the right time. If we did SKU the year prior, it would not have been the right time. And it was the right growth stage for where we were. And the mentors that we've established relationships with who work at Justin's, Smart Sweets, who are venture capitalists, who have worked at all these huge brands, or actually they were the brand and they sold it. And we now have these established relationships where they are going to be quite possibly even our board. Some of them will be on our board later on. And it's a 12-week course where every week is a different topic. And it's really kind of what you put in is what you get out of it. I think if I was a solopreneur, entrepreneur, it would be much harder. But since I have two other co-founders, it was easier for us to divide and conquer. But I'm going to Dallas next week for the finale of this cohort, where I am pitching my presentation about us Shark Tank style the first day, and then the second day is going to be on a video and then aired. So it's really accelerated us. I have no regrets. It's probably the best thing we've done since we've launched.
And then sort of specifically, is it about context you receive? Is it about specific advice that you've been able to act on? Is it confidence that you feel in the way that you're building it? What specifically have been the biggest wins from being at the accelerator?
So we've had subgroups with our mentors. One of them is building out our financial roadmap. The other one has been building out our strategic and marketing roadmap. And the other one has been our sales roadmap. And this is all to take us through the next 18 to 24 months to get us to our Series A. So to see that big picture. But, 1 week will be focused on e-commerce, where they'll have someone from Amazon come and speak. The next week will be on our operations or on raising money. And it's very, very specific topics every week that we can do real-time examples with that really bring the big picture to life. And since there's only other 5 brands in this program, so to give you an example, Eric, this program, some other brands that went through it were Siete. They're the chips, and they've grown like 100-fold. Epic Bars. So Epic Bars have gone through this. A lot of big brands have gone through this program. And, I think it's really just, are you willing to put in the time commitments? Because what you put in is what you get out. Makes sense.
Very cool. I wanted to ask also, one of the questions we ask all podcast guests is if, we were to give you a $50,000 USD grant right now, where would you put it into your business to see the most growth?
That is an excellent question. So where we would put that money in right now is we're really trying to automate our operations and work through just making it more operational and automated. We also will probably put some of that towards our inventory. When you're a food brand, you have to pay for all these upfront costs before you sell them. So almonds, cashews, walnuts. When you're shipping those across the country from California to our co-packer in Connecticut, you don't want to just be shipping 1,000 pounds at a time. We need to ship 10,000 pounds a time at least. So if you do the math, that's a huge amount of cost of goods. So we'd put part of it into our operations automation, into our cost of goods, and then lastly, but definitely not least, marketing. So we're doing a huge emphasis on marketing as soon as we hit the ground running in January, because it's healthy, it's health month. Everybody's back on a keto diet. Yep. They want to incorporate healthy goods into their diet, and we want to be really aggressive in Q1 with getting the awareness out there of who we are.
And is that going to be entirely through Amazon, or do you have other channels planned for that as well?
No, we actually have some really exciting things up our sleeve for Q1. So we are going to be on a morning show, which I can't divulge at the moment, but we're going to be on a morning show where we're going to be doing a really big push on there. And cool. We are going to be doing a lot of sampling and promotion with a lot of the stores we're currently in. As a startup, it's not enough just to say, oh, what's the next big store that we can get into? Like, you have to nurture the current stores you're in. Mm-hmm. We haven't been able to do sampling up until this point. Like, we have not done any sampling with our stores. And now, finally, they're allowing it. So this week alone, we're doing sampling in about 100 of our stores across the country. And we need to keep that going. So sampling and then follow up with the promotions. It's all part of the funnel, Eric, of you do the sample, then the consumer can go back, buy the product on sale, and then they'll come back and then buy it at full price. We want to be part of that funnel. It's not enough just to say, oh, here's a sample, like, good luck with that. And if there's a lot of planning and logistics that go with that with the store to make sure that they buy extra inventory. So, because if someone samples your product and then they go to purchase you and you're sold out, you've lost them. It's done, game over. So there's just a lot of planning that goes into this, and we're planning this now to really push this out in January.
Very exciting. I can imagine with a product like yours that sampling is hugely critical as well, because it's a differentiator. It has that crunch. It has, you want to know how it's different. You have to experience that, and there's no way to do it without sampling. Are you in Costco yet?
So that's really interesting that you talk about that, because Costco is kind of there's a funnel, and the period funnel starts with the natural channel, and that's where a big portion of our focus is right now. We need to win at the natural channel first, and Costco actually is at the bottom of that triangle. And that's a big focus for us probably in 2023, 2024. So they're the last of that. And before that, then comes like the convenience store channel, and before them comes more of those mainstream stores that we love, like Kroger. So Costco, ask me again in 2023.
Okay, sounds good. That's I could see that. You'd be ready for the bottom of the funnel at that time. You'd have to have your.
If Costco calls, we'll sign us up. But
depends if you partner with Hershey's to do some chocolate covered Hershey sprouted almonds.
Yes, exactly.
I wonder if they'd do that. Nice. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the D2C podcast today. If anyone in our audience wants to experience this crunch, they can go to dailycrunchsnacks.com right now and check it out.
Eric, can I actually give a promo code? Do you allow that?
Of course.
So if you enter crunch in the promo code, we are giving 20% off for your first order. So that's only through the end of the year, and we hope you enjoy, and that you enjoy the crunch as much as we do.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, you can do that right now at directtoconsumer, all one word, .co. I'm Eric Dyck, and this has been the D2C Podcast. We'll see you next time.